providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org.
The Democratic Socialists of America, aka the DSA, is holding its first official recruitment drive with the goal of reaching 100,000 active members. The DSA is not a political party, but a grassroots organization of community members, with each chapter having its own local and regional issue campaigns in addition to national initiatives. Birmingham DSA, for example, has prioritized distributing masks and other necessities through their Direct Snaction program. They have also been working in coalition with the People's Budget Birmingham to make the city for the many, not the few. The Charleston, South Carolina DSA has been working hard to protect at-risk tenants through their National Eviction Moratorium Awareness Community Canvassing campaign. The Metro DC DSA hosts Socialist Night School online seminars to educate their members. They recently had a section on the history of the Alabama Communist Party in coalition with the North Alabama and Birmingham DSA chapters. The New York City DSA has their Sing in Solidarity choir, while here in North Alabama we are focused on helping local businesses convert to union shops or worker-owned and operated cooperatives. Every chapter is unique and responsive to the needs of their community with their member-selected projects, and each chapter knows that it is necessary, but not sufficient, to just understand the problems facing our communities and workplaces. The point is to change them. If you are an essential worker, a union member, a teacher, a nurse, or a community activist working for social, racial, and economic justice, if you recognize that democracy restricted to the voting booth is democracy in name only, the DSA wants you. To join, visit act.dsausa.org/donate/membership 2020 or reach out to your local chapter to go ahead and get started. You can reach the North Alabama chapter on Facebook and at DSA North Alabama on Twitter or dsanorthalabama@gmail.com. The Birmingham chapter can be reached on Twitter at BhamDSA. Again, that is at DSA North Alabama or at BhamDSA on Twitter and via Gmail at dsanorthalabama@gmail.com. There are also chapters in Auburn, Montgomery, Atlanta, Memphis, Chattanooga, and the Middle Tennessee region. The DSA looks forward to having you in the struggle for real freedom and justice for all.
WVNN. Depend on it. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our communities.
One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger.
Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. It is Saturday, December 12th, 2020, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, December 13th, 2020, on the great WGOL in Russellville, Alabama. Today, we are talking to Taylor Barnes, a freelance journalist, about some writing she's done about Huntsville recently. We'll be talking to a member of the Mine Workers Union about a fund they have for unemployed folks that y'all may be interested in donating to. We'll be taking calls and more on today's Valley Labor Report. So thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL, Unionist. And if you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we clip segments and release them throughout the week, so you can just get what you want. Just take what you want from the show. Real easy. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. Also, we have a website now, thevalleylaborreport.org. That's got all of our shows, our podcasts, information about the show. And we'll probably be uploading some, might be uploading some articles and stuff like that as well. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. All right. So, folks, we're talking to Taylor Barnes today. Taylor Barnes is a freelance journalist who has writing in basically any news outlet that you can think of. She's based out of Atlanta, and she's very busy. So, Taylor, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'd say Taylor is a friend of the show. We've known Taylor now for a little over a year, I guess, and the Bolivia episode would not have happened without her. Like, I don't know anybody outside of Alabama, basically, much less outside of the country. And Taylor has lots of contacts internationally. She's written about all sorts of places. So when I got the idea to do the Bolivia episode, she was the first and the only person that I could think of that would know people in Bolivia. So I appreciate your help there. Wouldn't have happened without you. And so Taylor is an Atlanta-based journalist. She's written about topics as disparate as like Guantanamo, Brazil, Uruguay, all sorts of stuff. But a couple of days ago, she came out with yet another piece about Huntsville. How many pieces have you written about Huntsville now, Taylor?
Over this year, I've done three sort of in-depth pieces about Huntsville.
So what made you want to write so much about Huntsville, Alabama, being, as you are an Atlanta journalist who is generally kind of focused on international human rights stuff, as well as, whistleblowers in the defense industry, stuff like that. What made you want what made you want to write about Huntsville?
It's sort of a funny story. Like you just mentioned, I'm definitely very interested in human rights issues, in the defense industry, in conflict and war. And so probably maybe a year or two ago, I was having a conversation with an activist here in Georgia, a Veterans for Peace activist. And he was just telling me about the different kinds of activism he did around the South. And then he said, oh, yeah. And then one time I did a protest at the Pentagon of the South. And I said, wait, hold up. What is the Pentagon of the South? And then he explained to me Huntsville and, how important it is for defense spending. And so I did what a journalist would do. And I went to the website usaspending.gov, which is a tool that, journalists and any citizen can use as sort of a user-friendly way to look at government spending. And I ran a spending profile of Huntsville. And I said, holy cow, he wasn't kidding. So that was sort of my, the original reason I wanted to go to Huntsville. And as you guys probably know really well, local journalism is really struggling, and journalism done on the ground is really struggling. You're not going to see that many reporters coming to Huntsville. Thankfully, I mean, you guys do have local media, and I'm glad it exists, and I learn a lot from it. But it's also a place that that prominent, that gets that much kind of defense spending, I think needs to have even more attention. So that was my goal.
Okay, that's I didn't realize that's what brought you here, and so I definitely agree. This being the Pentagon of the South, it would be it would be really good if our neighbors, so to speak, knew more about what was happening and the broader political implications of what goes on here. So you mentioned that you kind of ran across Huntsville because of a peace activist in Georgia. And that's a good segue into your most recent piece. It came out in Scalawag magazine about anybody who lives in Huntsville knows about the Peace Corner. It's been going on for forever, it feels like, and so it's something that's very familiar to Huntsville residents, and you wrote about it. So tell us what did you what was in your article?
Yeah, I loved coming across the Peace Corner. And, it's something that's been going on for almost 2 decades. It dates back to the Iraq War era. And, some of the same people are still doing it. It's a ritual that they're doing every single week. One question I even had, I asked around, does anyone else know of a activism that has gone on for this long, like almost 20 years? And it really seems like it's, kind of a record almost nationally. So yeah, I reached out to the people involved in it, and I wanted to join them and wanted to, see what they were doing. And I found out that, not only do they run this Peace Corner, with messages like bring our war money home, tax the rich, veterans for peace. Not only do they do that, but they themselves are all people, not all, many of them though, have, a connection to the defense industry. This is a personal topic to them, One woman who takes part in the Peace Corner is a math tutor, and she grew up both in Saudi Arabia and in North Dakota because her stepdad was digging missile silos during the Cold War. That's just not an experience most Americans have and most Americans think about, I think, even though it's being done in all of our names. Another guy who participates in the Peace Corner is a Vietnam veteran and was an engineer for Raytheon, particularly in the 80s, which I think was a really boom time in Huntsville. So yeah, it was really nice to talk with them and see the protests and how they do this in, a way where they're talking about these really big, important issues, but they're doing it in a really friendly way, a sort of neighborly way. They're waving at people, they're giving them thumbs up. And you would think that, if Huntsville is, this defense town, would people be, hostile and angry? And it's the opposite. They're throwing them peace signs out the window. They're throwing them thumbs up. It's, a very friendly exchange. And like you guys said, everyone knows it. It's not new. They've been seeing it, week after week for years now. So it was really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that needs to be pointed out is the fact that, when we talk about the defense industry and when we talk about bringing our troops home and things like that, a lot of times, some of the people on the right get the feeling that we're trying to, disassemble or dismantle the defense industry. And that's, there's a big difference between defense industry and offense industry, and imperialism, U.S. imperialism across the globe, and bringing troops home from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Africa, from everywhere that we're waging offensives and still continue the defense industry. It's not like we're going to completely do away with the defense industry. It's the fact that we don't need to have a presence in all of these countries, and especially, with the drone strikes and things like that, the continuous drone strikes everywhere across the world.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and I think that's the direction that so many people want to go in. And I also think there's a lot of appetite to see the defense industry, mean something more. We're having almost 3,000 Americans die per day right now of COVID. It's an extraordinary number. We have Americans already suffering from climate change, from wildfires, from rising sea levels. And I think there's a lot of things to defend ourselves against that, are about people's well-being.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no kidding. Talk about misplaced priorities. I think that if ever there was a case of misplaced priorities, it would be defense industry money, so-called defense industry money, going to perpetuate these forever wars in the Middle East. Where I mean, one of the kind of clearest things is like, well, how did my freedoms get over there? Like, it's something that I think that. David, you mentioned some folks on the right. I think that it's something that even a lot of folks on the right understand that it doesn't make sense. I think that the people that pretend not to understand are the people that directly profit from it, like the people at Raytheon. And speaking of Raytheon, it looks like Biden is going to try to appoint a former board member from Raytheon who is still not been out of the military long enough to be legally allowed to be the defense secretary. He's going to have to get a waiver. And, just because he's from Alabama, I've seen some folks from Alabama being like, oh, this is a step in the right direction and whatever. But like, no, we shouldn't be having people on the board of Raytheon running the Department of Defense. We're going to be talking some more with Taylor Barnes, a freelance journalist, about Huntsville, the defense industry, stuff like that on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the machinist unions over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
WVNN.
stuck bleeding pig. Lonely ditch I choose today. Inside.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. I'm here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we have Taylor Barnes. Taylor Barnes is an Atlanta-based freelance journalist who has writing everywhere in the world that you can imagine.
Including one of our favorite, or I know at least my favorite periodical, In These Times.
In These Times, The Intercept.
I love In These Times.
Good stuff, good stuff. I'd say that my favorite is probably Current Affairs. I really like Current Affairs. I recommend it. But because I'm a union member, my subscription to In These Times is free, so I don't know, maybe I should rethink that. But we've been talking to Taylor Barnes. She has written 3 in-depth pieces about Huntsville recently. And we were talking to her about the Peace Corner and how surprisingly it's received kind of a warm reception in Huntsville. Of course, there are people that are kind of vitriolic and such, and you expect that no matter what you're saying. If you interact with the public, you expect some amount of vitriol. That's to be expected. But I think that there's a broad bipartisan consensus among working people, whether they vote for Republicans or Democrats in November. Among voters, among working people, I think the broad consensus is that our defense budget is bloated. We spend too much time and resources overseas, but our jobs, David and I both work in the defense industry. Yeah. So does everybody. I would say probably every single person in Huntsville has a connection to the defense industry, at least. If they don't work in the defense industry themselves, their dad does, or their brother does, or their son or daughter does.
Or they're supporting people they're servicing people in this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's overwhelming.
So we've got the largest per capita engineer, the most engineers per capita in the country, the second most STEM workers per capita in the country. This is the defense sector is all kinds of, it's got roots deep in the Huntsville economy, and that's by design. And in fact, Taylor, you didn't mention this in your piece, but I wonder if you know the specific stats on it. There are defense jobs with the top, the top defense contractors have lots of jobs in almost every congressional district by design, in Republican districts and Democratic districts, so that when you're voting on the defense budget, when you're voting on forever wars, basically you're voting for jobs for your district. And what I found really interesting and really useful about your piece in Southerly is you talked about the potential for a real, and you talk about real numbers and real statistics in your piece about how we would go from a defense industry to something that is more domestically focused, something that actually helps working people instead of killing working people overseas. So talk to us about that. What would that look like? Tell us some of those numbers, because I found that really interesting and informative.
No, I'm so glad you guys liked the article and so glad that it was informative. And, the first thing I kind of wanted to say is, when you guys were describing how, Huntsville is a place where a lot of people will have a connection to either the defense industry, either they work in it, they've got a relative who works in it. I most certainly, and I think it's really important to not blame workers for needing to take a job. I mean, I am in journalism. I definitely know what it's like to be in an industry that is hemorrhaging jobs getting worse, pay getting worse, job security getting worse. So, the last thing I would ever do is blame somebody for taking, a good job, especially one that, is coming from the federal government that, has that security. I just also think that we, as citizens should have more say and more voice in how that money gets spent. One funny story about, Huntsville and the economy, I spoke for that Southerly piece. I spoke with one of your mayoral candidates, and I said, okay, when you talk about Huntsville to your friends who don't live there, how do you describe it? He said, oh, Huntsville is a place that, you go out to drink and you meet some people in the bar, and every other person you meet has a security clearance.
Yes.
And I thought that was really funny and sort of hit the nail on the head about what kind of a place it is. But yeah, defense spending does create jobs, and that's, it's no joke. It's nothing to look down on. And there's just other ways to create jobs as well. And I think we should, have the permission to be a little bit more imaginative. And there's some great research from an academic center at Brown University called the Cost of War Project. And amongst other things, they look at job creation for the defense industry. And they say that it's actually one of the worst ways to create jobs from an economic standpoint. One reason is that it's capital intensive. So that means less money goes straight to salaries. Something like education, a lot more money is going straight to salaries. Another reason is that the defense industry does a lot of outsourcing. So that means it's not going straight to American jobs. So some of the ways that, economists propose spending that would make more jobs for, $1 million of investment is on clean energy, is on infrastructure, on education, on care, on the care economy, elder care, child care. All of these things would create more jobs and, ones that are, very stable. Something like, renewable energy. That's something that Americans need every single day. That's not, one war now that's here today and, ends in a decade. Renewable energy is something we're going to rely on for our whole lives. So I think it's just an important conversation to start having.
And that's something that you, in one of your articles a month, 6 weeks ago, pointed out was you, and really you sent it to us, and it really caught my eye and is in depth. And I try not to use the term Green New Deal because, these terminologies that several of the Democratic candidates are using, they do such a terrible job of messaging on them, and everybody on the right and a lot of people in the a lot of the moderates don't understand it's automatically termed socialism and, this and that and the other. And the fact of the matter is the defense industry is the biggest socialist, industry in the world. But you've done a great job in your article of interviewing, and I can't remember his name, I apologize, but Yost, a brilliant engineer and a brilliant design, and about what that transition could look like. And one of the biggest things that I see that you can bridge that gap of right, left, and moderates is the fact of energy independence and moving away from corporate conglomerate energy sources like Alabama Power and things like that. Oh man, I cut my commercial break. So we'll pick that up on the other side of the break. My apologies.
We're going to let Taylor answer that on the other side of the break. If you've got a question for Taylor, give us a call. 1-866-494-9866 is the number. We will be right back. This is the Valley Labor Report.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Brian Clark. Work is underway to distribute Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine a day after the FDA authorized it for emergency use. FedEx and UPS will handle the distribution to pre-selected sites in each state. ABC's Victor Oquendo is at FedEx headquarters in Memphis.
In the air, the FAA is saying that air traffic controllers will be aware of any planes carrying vaccine. They'll have priority clearance. And on the ground, they definitely want to keep these trucks safe if they're carrying vaccine. In many cases, they will have security escorts because this is going to be a massive undertaking. Both companies collectively hiring some 170,000 seasonal workers to help get through this workload. Keep in mind, this is all happening in the middle of the holiday shopping boom.
The vaccine also arrives as the U.S. experiences its deadliest phase of the pandemic. There were a record 3,309 deaths Friday, according to Johns Hopkins University. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn was asked today if he felt pressure from the White House to speed up the authorization timeline.
The representations in the press that I was threatened to be fired if we didn't get it done by a certain date is inaccurate.
President Trump hailed the announcement as a medical miracle, but ABC's Rachel Scott says that came as the Supreme Court dealt another blow to the bid from him and his allies to overturn election results.
The president celebrated that vaccine news, but then he did turn to blasting the Supreme Court, which for the second time this week rejected a case tied to his fight to try and overturn the results of the 2020 election. That lawsuit sought to throw out millions of votes in 4 battleground states, the high court saying that it lacked legal standing. President Trump then tweeting, "The Supreme Court really let us down. No wisdom, no courage."
Today, President Trump will travel to the Army-Navy football game. President-elect Joe Biden receiving a scan on his foot today in Philadelphia. His doctor says it's a routine 2-week post-injury scan after he sustained a hairline fracture. You're listening to ABC News.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
It's an awesome product. I've got my uncle on it, my mom on it. I've got 4 or 5 of my best friends from high school on it. They all have their own little story to tell about this condition or that condition going away. So kudos. It's just an amazing product.
Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order. Go to balanceofnature.com today and use discount code FRUITS.
Ready to create your own income with your own home-based business where there's no such thing as getting laid off? If a billionaire entrepreneur spent 5 years and $20 million searching for the next big trend, wouldn't you want to know what he found? If you're serious about making money from home without having to leave home, then write this down. www.goherenext.com. You decide your income. Get the facts now. Goherenext.com.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host, David Story. We are talking to freelance journalist Taylor Barnes about her pieces about Huntsville, Alabama, and the defense industry here. If you've got a question for her, you can give us a call, 1-866-494-9866, or you can tweet us or Facebook us. You can tweet us at Labor Reporters. You can go to our Facebook page at the Valley Labor Report. Let us know your question that way if you don't want to call us. Where we left off, we were talking about how David was talking about how the way that she wrote her article, and I really recommend checking it out. It's in Southerly Magazine. The title of the article is From Arms to Renewables: How Workers in this Southern Military Industrial Hub Are Converting the Economy. He was talking about how Robert Yost is the owner of American Wind, which is a wind turbine company local to Huntsville, doing some really cool work, and how we can not only be selling the Green New Deal as something that is good and just and all of those things, but it's something that would help the United States be more energy independent. It would be good for our national security interests, and like I was saying earlier, it would create jobs. And the numbers that you quoted, Taylor, in your piece were really interesting to me. What you said that that study that you mentioned said that for every $1 million invested by the government, the defense industry creates 6.9 jobs. The same amount invested by the government in clean energy creates 9.8 jobs. I mean, that's pretty significant.
That's substantial.
And if we want to talk about being fiscally conservative, we want to talk about being energy independent, we want to talk about doing good by our constituents, by the voters, by the working people in the United States, it's a good investment.
Yeah, most definitely. And you know what? Even when I put numbers like that in the piece, numbers speak to me, and I like seeing that. But look at that. Imagine it's about 2 more jobs, per $1 million. That's families that are supported. That's breadwinners that are supporting people who'd otherwise be struggling. Yeah, and another thing I want to say, sort of comparing the two industries, not only does energy and renewable energy infrastructure, rely on the same labor pool, engineers, mechanics, electricians, as the defense industry. But, when we're talking about the problem of needing to transition the United States to renewable energy, we're talking about budget figures that are kind of similar to what we spend on defense, So just this week, Congress is passing a defense bill, which is for $740 billion. Like it's the kind of thing when I type it, I have to be like, wait, did I get enough zeros in? It's just, It's extraordinary. And if you think back during the campaign, when Biden talked about his climate plan, he claimed he would spend $2 trillion over 4 years. So that's about, $500 billion per year. So actually defense still sort of takes the cake, but we're talking about things that require similar levels of investment. So, it's both a spending trade-off and it's a priorities trade-off. What do we need on a day-to-day basis? And I think a lot of Americans would say that they want to live in a cleaner environment.
Yeah, well, not just that. I mean, and I go back to the same thing because, just because you are trimming down some of the spending on defense doesn't mean that you're going to lose jobs. That doesn't mean that, all these people are going to go without work. There's no reason whatsoever you can't transition those same workers and those same engineers into something that benefits the U.S. population as a whole, as opposed to just these large defense corporations, and Yost was a perfect example. And break that cycle and provide the energy independence. And, everybody around here remembers the tornadoes that came through and wiped out the energy grid at my house for, I think it was 10 days we were without electricity. And had we been on a independent solar style or what Yost is doing with the wind turbines, then everybody would have still had electricity. And we would be generating it ourselves, and it would be clean. I mean, there's a win-win. There's no losses in this system.
Yeah. Tell us more about American Wind and Robert Yost. I know about him, but our audience doesn't. Tell us about that. I think that's a fantastic company. He's a good guy. Just tell us a little bit more about your conversations with him.
Yeah, I absolutely loved meeting Yost. He is an engineer and the founder of American Wind in Huntsville. And just a reminder, Huntsville is full of talent and full of smart people. It's got, the Chamber of Commerce says it has the highest concentration of engineers in the country. So it's not surprising that people are coming up with great solutions. And he worked across several industries, including the defense industry. He worked on fighter jets. He worked on cruise missiles. And when after the tornadoes in 2011, when his power was out, he said that his wife looked at a sort of pedestal fan, like the kind of fan you use to keep you cool, with its blades turning in the wind. And she says, why can't you get power out of that? And sort of launched him on a new career path. And he redesigned a wind turbine that looks less like an airplane propeller and more like a jet engine. So he's really transitioning, his understanding of, a technology that he, became familiar with in the defense industry and transitioned it to renewable energy. And it's so cool. It's, wind turbines, that we, know and see are gigantic things that are in wind farms. He's made ones that's like the size of a shoebox. And, it's not far away from your house. It can go right next to your house. It can go, right next to a restaurant. So I loved hearing his story and talking again about the point David was making about jobs. He and his son have told me that, they have a family member who, is a blue collar worker and comes in and out of town, and they trained him on the shop how to make these wind turbines. It's not, it's not some enormous obstacle. And I think there's a lot of job creation to be talking about in the transition to renewable energy and to building back our infrastructure.
Yeah. I was amazed. Because I've been doing research ever since the tornadoes on how my family can remove themselves from the grid, go to clean energy, and when I read your article, I was just floored because that's not out there anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You were the only person that's reporting on that, and everything that I'd read on WIN was unattainable in our area because we didn't. But after reading your article, I was floored.
And I didn't see this in your article, but I've talked to Yost. Like I know of him. I've had conversations with him. He said that those shoebox-sized turbines generate as much electricity as a 6-foot-tall wind turbine.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing.
So cool. Another thing I'd like to, point out that was also in the article talking about someone who, transitions in a way from, defense to a different kind of economy is a young woman who was an engineering student at University of Alabama in Huntsville. And she grew up surrounded by the defense industry. She's from Melbourne, Florida, the quote-unquote Space Coast. Yep. And she said she would see, job booms, job losses. It really depends on, what the government's buying, what the military's buying. And she just imagined that renewable energy would be a more stable industry for American workers because this is something that Americans need every single day. And she's on fire about solar power and solar panels. And a big issue she's trying to resolve is how to recycle solar panels because nowadays they last 15 to 30 years and then they go to the landfill. And she's imagining and working on a solar recycling program that she thinks would just create enormous employment because it'll take a specialized workforce to actually recycle all the valuable parts in these solar panels and get them back to use again. So I think there's just so much possibility that we can be investing in.
Yes, yeah, and she's incredibly smart. I had multiple classes with her in college, and she was always like top of the class, the most interested in what was going on. So, if anybody can do it, I'd say that she probably can. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she's able to do and seeing Yost's company succeed. I mean, there's just so much potential here in Huntsville and across the country for this kind of transition. And I think that people really discount the actionability and practicality of a lot of this because as you point out in your article, it's not this thing that's unreasonable. It's very reasonable. So as we're wrapping this up, Taylor, you're a freelance journalist. Can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned that jobs are kind of few and far between often for freelance journalists, that it's an industry that's having a lot of issues. What's it like kind of being in this place where you're so, being a freelance journalist, that seems pretty precarious to me.
Yeah. It's definitely precarious, and I have been a freelance journalist for more than 10 years now, so it's been a lot of ins and outs. Talk about like boom and bust times. There's times when things are going well, and then there's times when there's dry periods for a long time. And so really what's happening is that major news outlets have cut jobs in a huge way. Local news is dying and just like I said, hemorrhaging jobs. There's been a lot of talk about the growth of quote-unquote news deserts across the country, which are, counties, cities, and towns that have no news source and have no, nothing to track the day's events. And, there is, of course, a rise in citizen media and, social media and being able to produce our own news. But I don't think, I have to tell you guys that, there's, between, an unpaid reporter and a paid reporter, the level of rigor and the level of, professionalism you can get, of course, is going to be, better. You need to invest in this. If you want quality news, it needs an investment. So a lot of people like me, I basically entered the job market post 2008. So, the jobs weren't there and, the news jobs weren't there. So we've sort of made it on our own as a freelancer, which means that we are, selling our articles on a case-by-case basis. And that can vary enormously. I know of some local reporters who get paid something like, $30 to $50 per article when they're covering, city council meetings versus, the really high end stuff, writing for big national magazines. And of course can get, thousands and thousands of dollars per article. But there's a lot of inequality there.
Right. We're going to talk some more about that on the other side of the break. Folks, stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334, or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
Where Alabama talks, WVNN. Depend on it.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. We are talking to Atlanta-based freelance journalist Taylor Barnes. We were talking to her about the state of journalism in America, and I think that a lot of people, realize that it's tough to be a journalist, especially to be a freelance journalist. And you mentioned the inequality, and you mentioned that you're not going to get as good as quality of work if it's unpaid. You mentioned that a lot of people are kind of doing this on the side, like they've got a day job, and then every other afternoon maybe they'll go to a city council meeting and write up about it, or maybe every other afternoon they'll write a Facebook post or a blog post or something. I do things like that. Of course, this is a side gig for David and I. We don't even get paid for it. I mean, we don't even get paid for it. So of course, if this was our job, right, it would be a lot better. And the same goes for any other kind of media. There are a lot of people that kind of do like passion projects, but they that's not their job. So it's just simply not going to be as good.
Yeah, most certainly. And you know what, to sort of change topics for a second, there is an amazing story that happened here recently in Georgia during, as you probably saw, our extremely nail-biting vote counting after the election. There's a county south of Atlanta called Clayton County that's ended up being where votes were counted, where votes finally turned in Biden's favor. So everybody was watching this county. Were there journalists in it? Hardly. And there was one woman who started her own journalism shop, just a nonprofit. She called it Clayton Crescent. She was there with the vote counters, watching the tally come in. And before she became famous for, everybody watching her Twitter account, everybody watching, this vote counting going on, she had done a GoFundMe over the summer trying to get, money for this outlet. And she had trouble raising $2,000. That's, it's basic. She couldn't even raise $2,000 for this outlet. And she's there on the ground as things were happening, like, right. These poll observers coming in and, they threatening that something illegal was happening. That's watchdog journalism is showing up.
Yep.
So, major inequality in our industry and sort of a major we have priority issues about what kind of news we prioritize and what kind of news we don't prioritize and invest in.
Yeah, well, and it's important for everybody to realize, I talked about in these times a while ago, Jacob talked about current affairs. I think both one of our one of our top reporters or journalists is Kim Kelly over at Teen Vogue, doing amazing work.
The Intercept is good.
The Intercept, but it's important for people to realize that without people like you, without people like Kim on the ground reporting these issues, eventually it gets to the point where nobody hears any information. And what does the saying? Democracy dies in dark.
Right.
So it's important for us to give back to these journalists and pay them their just due and their worth, such as yourself, and subscribe to these, even if it's not a periodical, even if it's an online, pay a few dollars, support the work that's going on in the community.
Yeah, Taylor, David and I both, we subscribed to a number of periodicals ourselves. We try to support, I mentioned that because I'm a union member, I get my subscription to In These Times for free, actually, but I do pay for my current affairs subscription. I believe there's a couple of others, and once my free 1-year subscription for In These Times is over, I'll be paying for that. Is that the solution? As a journalist yourself, what would you kind of like to see happen to make the industry better? Like if you were given like a magic wand, like what would you do?
First I also wanted to quickly add to some of the outlets you were mentioning. We also have some really good outlets here on the ground in the South that are doing good work. Some nonprofit outlets. The one I just wrote for, Scalawag, they cover activism, they cover social justice movements. Southerly Magazine, also the one I've written for, which covers environmental issues across the South. So important. There's another really nice outlet called Facing South that has done a lot of labor issues. It did a lot around, poultry workers and meat packing workers during COVID.
That's one that I'm actually talking. I don't know if you know Olivia, but I'm talking with Olivia now, trying to get her on the show to talk about, because they've been covering a lot of workers' rights issues in the South, and especially in poultry plants where the conditions are horrendous. But you're right, Facing South is another. There's so many great places out there. The Baffler is another one that I read. Dissent. I mean, and you show up in most of them as well. So.
You asked sort of what I would do if I could wave a magic wand, and I think there's things we can correct as an industry, and then there's things where we, need readers to help too. So we have our own internal problems. We overpay, columnists who sit in their desk in big cities and, write provocative, controversial columns about, the country, current affairs, et cetera, and then underpay reporters who are on the ground actually reporting, real original news. We have a really big concentration of journalists in media hubs. So a lot of journalists in Washington, a lot of journalists in New York. I don't know, maybe you guys might have seen on social media some of the images of, the Trump impeachment, where you'll see, a crowd literally of 100 journalists, like a scrum, recording it behind. And of course, it's an extremely important event, but we just need, I really believe strongly that we need media and national media to be all across the country. So I think those are some of the things we can do. And also, it's tough. I know readers are being asked for money to go in a lot of different directions, but at the end of the day, that's part of getting quality news. You get what you pay for. People will love to gripe about cable news and how it's, filled with ads, or, You know, how they open up their local newspaper online nowadays and you get a million ads popping up on you. But, like, you know, that's unfortunately going to be the reality until we find a better way to pay for it.
Or, you know, like when I think a couple of weeks ago when you originally emailed us your article, you know, I pointed out that thank God somebody is writing something besides this damn political election. I'm so sick and tired of reading about, you know, but like you said, that's what's paying right now. But and that's unfortunate. There's so much more work to be done by average everyday Americans than worrying about the presidential election. And that may sound dismissive, but I think it's the truth. You know, you're writing about things that matter to people, that's actually going to make a difference in people's lives, as opposed to who's getting elected this year.
You know what? I 100% agree with that. And another big problem I think we have in media is sort of over-nationalization. You know, we talk a lot about the big national stuff, and then we have these news deserts where we actually live. I have family members, for example, who read the New York Times because it's a great paper, you know. It's a great paper. You get the news, you do a crossword puzzle, you read an essay, it's nice, and then literally don't know the name of the mayor in their town, you know, and then they can talk all day long about Bill de Blasio because, you know, they're reading the New York Times and it's, you know, it's a great paper. But there's just a major gap in, you know, what we're reading, what we're caring about. But, you know, and it goes both ways, you know. We need to look for those sources, but we also need to invest in them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a powerful statement that you just said, because most of the people in our state have no clue who their state representative are.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, being able to talk, living in the South and being able to talk about, have an opinion on Bill de Blasio and not knowing who your state rep, or Andrew Cuomo, not knowing your state rep or your mayor. I mean, it's an epidemic, really. You know, it's really, really,
and that's why they
really
get away
bad.
with so much that they get away with here.
Yeah,
and in every other state.
Yeah, and you know, I'll mention just kind of a historical tie-in to what you're saying. You know, people talk about kind of the glory days of the news when everybody turned into you know, NBC and could agree that this was that was what was happening. You know, there's a bit of kind of looking at the past with rose-colored lenses and stuff like that, and being able to read the New York Times and stuff. Well, the period before that, when you had, you know, the muckrakers and stuff like that, my understanding of the history is that the muckraking, the yellow journalism, the kind of really subpar stuff kind of went away once people started subscribing to newspapers and actually paying for it instead of having to be paid by advertisers and stuff. And so we have gone back to a more advertiser model, and maybe going back to a more subscription-based model could help bring us back out of that, out of this kind of state of journalism, state of affairs that we've got now.
Let's be honest. Most of the media that people are consuming nowadays is not news. Right. What you're seeing on TV, what you're hearing on the radio are opinion pieces, and they're very divisive opinion pieces, because that's kind of got to where we are as a society in general. You're not hearing news articles or reading much unless, you know, you're following some of the works of yourself and others. Right. So, you know, most of what we're seeing, even at the Fox level, at CNN and MSNBC, it's absolute trash. It's absolute trash. 24/7 divisiveness.
You know, on that same point, the article of mine that you guys, you know, have mentioned here in Southerly Magazine, which covers environmental issues, it was funded by a group called the Solutions Journalism Network, which is saying, you know, Americans are reading a lot about problems. They're reading a lot, you know, things that are very divisive. What can we write about that points to what we should be doing, you know? Right. And this, I think that's why the article was just really well received. I had a lot of people giving me great feedback about it. I had people commenting saying, yeah, that's the transition I want to make. I want to go from arms to renewables. Yeah, I think there's a lot of appetite for that.
Yeah. We're going to bring Taylor back on the other side of the break just to let us know where people can find her work, and then we'll be taking calls. 1-866-494-9866 is the number. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison. This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
The FDA issuing emergency use authorization for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, clearing the way for it to be shipped across the country. FDA Commissioner Dr. Stephen Hahn today.
Science and data guided the FDA's decision. We worked quickly based on the urgency of this pandemic, not because of any other external pressure.
Trucks and planes in place as the massive rollout is ready to begin. It comes as the U.S. sees the deadliest week of the pandemic so far. 3,309 people died Friday, according to Johns Hopkins University. More than Pearl Harbor, more than 9/11. The Supreme Court has rejected a lawsuit brought by the Texas Attorney General aimed at overturning the election results in 4 key swing states. President Trump had called it perhaps the most important case in history. On this 5th anniversary of the Paris Climate Accord, President-elect Joe Biden has pledged to rejoin the pact aimed at curbing global warming on his first day in office. I'm Dave Packer, ABC News.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air.
Have an Amazon Echo? Just say, Alexa, play WVNN. And you'll always have the only radio station of relevance in Alabama. WVNN. WVNN.
Try to act it up. You got the principal J-Rig, act it up. You got the fire, try to act it up. You got the principal J-Rig, act it up. You got the fire. You call yourself a girl. You call yourself a girl.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line we have Atlanta-based freelance journalist Taylor Barnes, friend of the show, fantastic writer and reporter. Could not say enough good things about her. We've talked about peace, we've talked about war, talked about transitioning from a defense-heavy economy to a clean energy economy. We've talked about the state of journalism. Just ran the gambit. If you missed part of the interview, go back, subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Valley Labor Report on YouTube. You can watch the interview. Really good stuff. I've really enjoyed it. So Taylor, just to wrap up, where can people find you? Where can people find your work? I know you've got a place where we can find, kind of everything that you've written. So.
No, thank you guys so much for having me on. People can both follow me on Twitter. I'm at TK Barnes, so TKBARNES. And I also have a website, same name, www.taylorkbarnes.com. And the website, I made it about 10 years ago when I began this career, so please don't judge me if it looks like it's a little dated. I'll update it one day.
And we'll link to your website and everything, and I think Jacob tagged you yesterday whenever he sent out a tweet, but we'll make sure that we link to your website in the description notes and things like that as well, so you can check that out if you want to find her.
Yep. Taylor, thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, you have a good one. So then we were going to talk some about, last week we had a big show. It was kind of a big production on Bolivia. We had 6 different interviews. We talked to an author of 3 books on Bolivia. We talked to a bunch of folks about it, and so I wanted to kind of talk about our thoughts. I wanted to give David neither of us have had a chance to kind of independently give our thoughts about those interviews, and I think that I think that we've got a lot to say about it. So I thought that it would be a good opportunity to talk about this. But first, is that the mine worker on the phone?
It is Larry Spencer, Brother Spencer on the phone. You ready to bring him in?
Yeah, we can go ahead and bring him in before we talk about the Bolivia stuff.
He is queued up.
All right, Larry Spencer, thank you so much for calling in. Larry Spencer is a member of the United Mine Workers of America here in Alabama. They've got something that they're doing down there in south of here in Alabama. So, Larry, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, actually, I'm the vice president, the international vice president of District 20, which covers Alabama. And what's going on is we've got 350 coal miners that's been laid off at Shoal Creek Mine, which is up in Walker County, Tuscaloosa, Walker, and Jefferson. It covers pretty much all of them, but we've been putting on some food drives for them the last couple of weeks to try to help them get through this. We have no idea when they're going to be able to get them back to work, and this has hit at a real hard time. So we was just wanting to let y'all know that we was doing this food drive, and that we can try to, do what we can to support these guys.
So, Brother Larry, have y'all got a GoFundMe or PayPal or Venmo or anything like that where we can link to and spread the word about? I mean, a lot of people in our listening area, especially the ones that's online, listen nationwide. They'll probably be willing to help, but they're not going to be able to get food. But I'm sure y'all have somebody that would be more than willing to go out and purchase the food if we can get some donations to you.
We do. We've been purchasing the food. We've partnered with United Way of Central Alabama, and there's a account set up. It's Community Partners of Alabama, and they can mail it to the United Way of Central Alabama, P.O. Box 320189, Birmingham, Alabama, 35232. Attention, David Clark.
David Clark.
Okay. Now give us that address one more time, and that's it's the United Way of Central Alabama.
Yes. Again, the checks need to be made out to Community Partners of Alabama, and it needs to be mailed to United Way of Central Alabama, P.O. Box 320189, Birmingham, Alabama, 35232.
Okay. And me and Jacob didn't have a lot of chance to talk about this, so I'm kind of running blind, but I'm asking questions that I'd normally ask if some of our members were laid off. Is there anything that y'all are doing to help the family with Christmas, as far as Christmas present? Because, I mean, if people are laid off, they're relying on the minimum to get their bare subsistence, and we don't want the kids to suffer through Christmas. Is there anything y'all are doing on that aspect of it, or anything we can help you do on that aspect of it?
Well, actually, what happened was we was planning to do that, but we've had so much trouble trying to get the food and stuff up because this happened so quick that we haven't been able to establish a toy drive because we've been trying to deal with this food. Usually when we have a problem, we can reach out to the food banks, but right now they're just covered up with this problem with coronavirus and stuff. So,
yep, I get it. And we got 13 days till Christmas, unfortunately. So, how many members have y'all got? How many members is this affecting?
350.
Geesh, and that's probably, you can take that, multiply it times 4 and figure that's how many actual, roughly 1,200 family members that's suffering right now over this.
That's right.
Yeah, that's well. I hope we can get some folks mailing out some checks. And who is that CO at the United Way of Central Alabama?
David Clark.
Okay.
David Clark. Okay, I'm gonna we're gonna tweet that out. Have y'all got a Twitter account?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Well, we'll do everything we can. Jacob and I and the show will all share it, and we'll see if we can't get some other people sharing it, and see if we can get some money coming in to help these folks out.
Yeah. So we appreciate you taking the time to call in the show. We're again, what's happened is that some members of the United Mine Workers of America down in Tuscaloosa County, about 350 of them have been laid off. If you want to help, get some, help the union buy some food for them, you can send checks made payable to Community Partners of Alabama. That's who the check is going to be made out to, Community Partners of Alabama. Send the check, mail the check to United Way, Central Alabama, CO David Clark. The P.O. Box address is P.O. Box 320189, Birmingham, Alabama, 35232. Larry, thanks so much for calling in, and I hope we can get y'all some support.
Thank y'all so much.
All right,
brother. Man, that's terrible.
Yeah. That's tough. And, with the unemployment stimulus having run out
everything's coming to an end.
It's all, we've got that eviction moratorium ending. If some more relief isn't passed, it's really going to hurt workers like that all over the country. So if you're in a position where you can give, we'd highly recommend it.
And it goes without saying, because a lot of times people say, well, I can't give a lot, so I'm not going to fool with it. I can't give $5. I can give $5. I can't give $100. Mail them $5. If you can mail them $5, mail them. If we can get 100 people mailing them $5,
100 people mailing them $2.
Yeah, whatever you can give. I'm certainly going to go home today and figure out what we can give. It's a shame that they didn't have time to get this toy drive together. And I was sitting there looking at the calendar and thinking, is there any way we can help bring that together this quick? But I mean, with 13 days left, man, there's not enough time to organize something like that.
That's really tough. So for the rest of the show, I thought we could talk about Bolivia. The whole show last week, we just kind of let our interviewees talk. I spliced up the interviews to get some of the most relevant portions. And if you want to hear the full interviews, make sure that you're supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Each of those interviews I had to cut down to about 10 minutes, and they were out of, an hour-long interviews. So, so if you want to hear those, support us on Patreon. If you can't support us on Patreon, no worries. They'll be out for everybody in 3 weeks or so. But David, what were some of your takeaways from those interviews?
I would say my biggest takeaway from all of the interviews that we were able to put together was the strength and power and resilience of the workers in Bolivia. That is, we talked to some of the most brilliant minds that's working in Bolivia. Becker, McNally, just, you know, I mean, and it's thanks to Taylor, of course, but through you and Taylor, y'all were able to pull off, in my opinion, probably one of the most important shows that I've ever seen on focusing on those workers in Bolivia. But I kept going back to the fact that we heard about the workers being murdered by, you know, and the government basically calling a moratorium on any prosecution of the military and allowing them free reign to go into the streets and start executing people. And it was, for one, it was it was heartbreaking to hear that happen. But for two, the fact that those people continue fighting and continue coming together and just, I mean, it's amazing. It is exactly opposite of what we have seen for the past 40 years in America with the destruction of organized labor nationally. And it's so difficult. I think in America, none of us have been executed in the last generation. Well, most of us hadn't. There's been some violence on picket lines and things like that, but nothing like that. Nothing like the military that we hadn't seen in 100 years. But morally, we've been decimated, and it's so hard to get people to come together on these issues. But they still believe in worker solidarity, and they're still out in their community fighting for each other.
Yeah, well, you know, the single person embodiment of that is Patrice Arce.
Yeah.
You know, Patrice Arce, Thomas Becker talked about this in our interview. She was beaten, sexually assaulted, partially scalped, dragged through the streets, told to denounce her party and the workers' movement. And she said, "You can do whatever you want to me. I'm going to be fighting for the working people of Bolivia." And now she's in the government.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and want to be a part of this union, to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
WVNN. Depend on it.
The long-haired preachers come out every night.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. We were kind of giving like a debrief on our Bolivia, on the Bolivia interviews. And, David was talking about how his kind of biggest takeaway is the resiliency and the fight that the workers have in Bolivia. And
solidarity.
And solidarity. I mean, it is really amazing. And, the embodiment of that was Patrice Arce, who was assaulted, who was partially scalped, dragged through the streets, and told to denounce her party, denounce working people. And she said, "You can do whatever you want to me. You can kill me. I'm not going to do that." And now she has been duly elected again into the parliament. And it's just really a story of, she's like kind of the embodiment of the resiliency of working people and their advocates in Bolivia. And
not only the resiliency, but something else that comes to mind that we constantly talk about on this show is they haven't allowed a lot of corporate, political parties to separate the working class in Bolivia. And, I fought you. Well, I won't say I fought you, but I was dismissive early on of a Bolivia show. And then as we began doing the interviews, it really spoke to me about we can learn a lot from these workers. But one of the biggest things that I learned is the fact that in America we've allowed these corporate entities, the Democrats and the Republicans, they've done a wonderful job of dividing all of the workers across the United States and picking a camp and fighting these cultural fights that literally affect almost no one that we know, but they keep everybody stoked, feared, hatred of each other instead of all the workers coming together. And that's the biggest takeaway from Bolivia is the fact that all of these workers understand exactly what they need, and they are forming a worker party surrounded around their demands and their needs instead of constantly. I mean, how many times has the Republicans and the Democrats both promised us something in a campaign and never, ever deliver on it? It's constant.
Right.
And so, they haven't allowed, it's like we never learn from our mistakes. We keep buying into the same horse crap every 4 years.
Well, and how effective it's been, it's really amazing the stuff that the MAS government, President Evo Morales, were able to do while they were in power. And it's amazing that they were able to throw off a coup government backed by right-wing forces in Central and South America and backed by the United States. And, it wasn't just that they were able to vote out a fascist. It's that
murdering fascists.
Right. But it wasn't even that they were able to vote. It's like they were so powerful that they forced the government to hold a vote. The government was trying their best not to hold a vote, but they went out on strike. They went out on general strikes. They blockaded roads. They were very strategic and very powerful and very effective, and they were able to force a fascist coup government to hold elections and force them to concede when they lost. That is real power. That is real power for working people. And, that it's power that has been used to lift up poor people in Bolivia. They have cut their poverty rate in half, cut their extreme poverty rate in half. They have industrialized sections of Bolivia that have, they've built roads. They've brought electricity out to a lot of places in Bolivia that didn't have it before under the Morales government. I mean, it's really, really amazing the things that they've been able to do and the way that they were able to do it. I learned a lot. And one of the things that I kind of kick around, of course, labor unions in the United States are really kind of de facto basically supportive of the Democratic Party. And I don't know, one of the things that I've thought about is just like if we're able to elect these two Democrats in Georgia and still like they don't pass the PRO Act and they don't do anything good for working people, they don't fight for us, like, I don't know. I would probably be close to supporting like just a total and complete stop on using our PACs for electoral processes until we can figure out what the hell is going on.
We talked about it last night. I shot you a message, and I'm not going to bring up her name, but because she's a fellow labor activist, and I'm not going to put anybody down on the radio that we all struggle. We all are fighting for workers. But, we talked about it last night, and the fact that this specific person came on a national show and was very slow to condemn a lot of the things that are happening on the Democratic side because and it's simply because they we are beholden to them as opposed to they are being beholden to us. And we've got to turn that around to where not just one party is beholden to us, but both parties are beholden to us.
Yeah, there was a tweet that, and so, we've talked about this, how unions it is illegal for unions to use dues money for political campaigns, okay? Like, I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying here, but union members can voluntarily donate, aside from dues, to political action,
just as anybody else, any other worker in the world.
We can donate to PACs, and so lots of unions do have separate PACs, and they use those PACs that their members donate to support campaigns. And so the one union, the laborers union, spent $25 million from their PACs and from their affiliated PACs in 2020 supporting Democrats. And that
mostly Democrats.
There was a few Republicans, of course, but mostly Democrats. And somebody mentioned that could have funded 400 full-time organizers, and which would have been a better investment for those workers, for that union, for the labor movement.
You're in a catch-22.
Yeah, you're in a catch-22 because you've got to be involved in the political process. Of course, you've got to let politicians know your demands and what is going to be good for your members. But how much resources should we really be devoting to electoral politics versus how much should we be devoting to organizing? And I'm very, the Labor Council here in North Alabama, we're organizing phone banking and postcard writing for the elections in Georgia in support of Warnock and Ossoff. But man,
specifically in support of the PRO Act,
specifically,
that needs to be said.
Right. Yeah,
I could care less who is running for office. We want the PRO Act passed.
The Protecting the Right to Organize Act is very important for the labor movement. And if Warnock and Ossoff get in and the Democrats cannot pass the PRO Act in a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate with a Democrat in the White House, I would be very open to a full and complete stop on our PACs supporting Democrat until we can figure out what the hell is going on, because the buck has to stop somewhere. We've got to get something out of our support for politicians. And I understand politics is dirty, and you've got to you win some and you lose some, and you have to be willing to play that game. But if they're not willing to play that game with us, we've got to the buck has to stop somewhere.
And if any Republicans want to support the PRO Act, call us.
Yeah,
call us.
Ted Cruz
we'll
said
get you some money.
Right. Ted Cruz said that the Republicans are the party of the working class. Prove it.
Prove it.
Prove it.
WVNN Athens, WVNN FM Trinity, a Cumulus station. It's 11 o'clock. News starts now.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. On a day that saw more people die in the U.S. of coronavirus than die